Welcome back to Arena the Contest here. It's Flanks, and today I got two special guests. We got Tyshin and Code from the tournament and the Discord channel. What's up, guys?
What's up?
Hey,
Tonight I wanted to, we got a little lull in the tournament. We had a couple matches that had to get rescheduled for next week. So the match that was supposed to play yesterday at 3 p.m. actually didn't happen because somebody had to quickly change their schedule and weren't able to make the time that we posted. So unfortunately, we didn't get to play that match yesterday, which I believe was between I'm Board Gamer and Wonderkiss. So I think next week we'll be doing that one, and then we also have a second match between Quaddle and Tiger Halsey, and then the last one between Priest and Code. So we got a lot of matches next week. I hope I have enough time to even do it all. but
Weekend bash.
yeah, I know, right? It's gonna be crazy, and then hopefully the week after that, I've already talked to Alex about it, so I'm pretty much trying to stick to the schedule as much as possible. Will be March 20th. Will be the last matches that we'll do, and at least for the final one, we may do the I don't know what do you call it, like the semifinals, or the basically it's for the second and or no, the third and fourth position. Um,
Semis.
yeah, that will probably be like maybe we have to get final details, but maybe the 19th. It could be the 20th, but 20th for the finals. And Alex from Dragori Games will actually be joining us, and he'll be doing some commentary with me and kind of helping judge the final match. And we're gonna try changing up those last matches a little bit to kind of throw off the players, and at the same time make it a little interesting and do some different things. So, and once we get closer, we'll go over all that. But anyway, so tonight, what I wanted to focus on is a topic that I've seen coming up a few times, and that has to do with team compositions and also like team picking, especially related to PvP. So that's part of the reason why I have these guys here. Is them being in the tournament, they've gotten some experience here on picking some teams, uh, not just even in the tournament, but also previous matches that we've done before, and maybe even on their own, because I believe you own the game, right, Tyshin?
yes.
Yeah. So you've gotten a little extra experience on that kind of thing too. So thought we'd go over a couple topics and hopefully keep it relatively short tonight. So anyway, so I think the first thing that we wanted to kind of talk about was just the topic of counter picking, right?
Yes.
So, uh, so when I'm talking about counter picking, is the idea that one player will select a hero, and this is actually a little bit more effective if you're not the person that picks first, but the person that picks second. That's kind of part of the reason why I also allow you the opportunity to give up your, like if you roll first, in the PvP tournament, to pick second if you want and let somebody else, because that gives you the opportunity to counter pick the other player versus them. They're just going to pick the heroes that they want, and you get the opportunity to counter pick. So obviously there's a little back and forth both ways, but so the idea is, one player picks, let's say, a brute, and then you get to decide who is the hero that maybe will counter the abilities and effects that that person has selected. So anyway, do you want to give any examples or anything that you've run across, Tyshin?
Well, I think first of all, there's some distinct advantages to like picking first and picking second. Because picking first, if you were going in with like a specific team comp in mind that you're like, this is the style of play that I want to do, picking first has its advantages because you don't have to alter your style most likely going into that because you get the first pick and you can build around whatever hero you pick first.
Yep.
But picking second is the counter pick advantage, where if you see somebody come in and they grab, Jade the Bard for their first pick, there's a huge synergy between her and the Minotaur.
Yep.
And knowing that synergy as a counter pick, you could be like, well, the Minotaur is great just to begin with.
Yeah.
He doesn't need Jade to be great with. So you could counter pick and kind of take advantage of what you think their team comp is going in that direction. And you could counter pick the Minotaur to get ahead of that curve so that they don't have the synergy between those two.
So
Um,
just for people that may not already know, I'm pretty sure I know the reason why you would want to pick Jade and the Minotaur together, but do you want to explain why you think they're a good combination?
oh, yeah, for sure. Sorry.
No, that's fine.
So with her ability, that's angelic voice. Obviously, you do a little damage, you do a little bit of healing, and allies hastened. But its primary attacks are criticals if it's 17 or more on the die. So you're able to up the critical percent chance of your actual hero by 15%. And the Minotaur has an ability called Reckless Blow that on a critical hit, it deals plus 10 damage instead of plus 5. So when he rolls the die with Reckless Blow and using Jade's ability, he has a 20% chance to roll that critical
Yep.
instead of a 5%. So it's pretty strong in just upping that critical chance, but then doing 10 damage instead of 5 is really impressive. And if you utilize the passive power and you hit that critical, I mean you're talking 31 damage right off the
Yeah.
with
And,
with
and on a
one
primary.
primary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty massive. And you combine that also with the fact that you get hastened, and for that's obviously good for really any character, but if you are a melee character that maybe needs to get a little bit around the battle and you don't have to pick, the guy that's right in front of you, maybe you go for, a shooter or something that's not too far away from where you are, you can get there without inciting any reaction attacks.
I
Uh,
mean, think about this. So, part of the Brute's massive damage output is him being alone.
yeah.
Like he wants to be on his own, and if you can send him into the back lines and hit a shooter, 31 damage is more than half of the shooter's total hit points.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's crippling if you could pull that off.
Yeah, and yeah, you definitely make a good point. The brutes, that's really what they specialize in, is trying to get to those back lines. So Merlot, he's got bull charge that can allow him move additional squares. I mean, even Count Blake with Night Cloak allowing to move up to
Mm-hmm.
5 squares can easily get them past the front lines and into the back. Also, I'd like to mention one other really good combination between the two is Inspire Greatness, which gives you a permanent positive condition on an ally.
Mm-hmm.
So if you give Merlot, in addition, Blessed on his attacks, I mean, you could, you give him that, and then when you get your chance come back, do angelic voice, get him on there. I mean, now you've just even doubled your chance of getting that, additional damage on that crit too from Reckless Blow.
That's so strong.
Yeah, it's very very good combination.
So obviously you don't want your opponent to have that combination. So
Yep.
if somebody picks Jade, I'm probably picking the Minotaur. Or if somebody picks the Minotaur, I'm probably picking Jade, just to keep those two separated.
Well, and we're not even talking about all the other, combinations that they have together because Jade is so mobile, right? She's got heroic melody,
Heroic
which
medley, yeah.
yeah, which lets her move people around. which is really good for really anything, but especially like a brute that wants to get in those back lines.
Makes it much easier to penetrate defenses with that.
Yeah, definitely. So, what about you, Code? Any certain combinations that you found really interesting or fun to play with?
Um, I usually go into these looking at counter picks more than combinations, actually.
Oh, okay. So you're almost a little bit of the opposite of Tyshin then.
Yeah, the reason for that is that sometimes, if you've been playing the game a while or long enough, you're gonna know that certain characters are better for PvP, and that's something we've been discussing a lot. So, for example, I like to use the healers as this for what I'm trying to get across here is that we know Talia and Jade are probably the best two healers overall. Not to say the other two are not as good, but usually if you're gonna go for a healer, if one of those two get grabbed, you want to grab the other one. Um, but that's one strategy. The other thing is if you're looking at your opponent's team, it's good to know what all their abilities are and checking out any abilities that can help you counter those,
Yep.
aka counter picking. But if you see their team is very defensive or very offensive, you might want to do the opposite. Try to deal more damage or be more defensive, depending on which way they're going.
Yeah.
Uh, that's one way to look at it. Comboing though is important
What was that?
because you don't. Comboing is very
Yeah.
important though
Oh,
because you don't
definitely.
want to pick just a bunch of counter picks that don't work together.
Yeah.
So you got to have a sort of a balance. I usually like to kind of have an idea what team I want to go with and at least stick to that team within 3 characters and keep one counter pick character.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's the way I usually look at it. But sometimes it's not as easy as it looks because that counter pick character might not always be something that works with the other characters all the time. And so you got to kind of make trade-offs somewhere.
Yeah. So, going back to the point you made earlier, real quick. So, in your opinion, why do you say Talia and Jade are the more go-to healers versus Ustar the Necromancer and Tarim?
Well, Ustar is they're like I said, it's a very good character, but he requires some of your characters to die off, so he's a late game potential.
Yep.
Compared to stuff like Talia, Spring Seeds is a very strong healing ability if you pull it off, plus revivability. Ustar, I don't believe does not have any revivability.
Nope.
Has decent healing, but like I said, you need to have a few of your characters die. And sometimes, if 2 characters are already dead, you're getting into the late game, you're getting on the edge. That would mean he's still alive and one other character.
Yeah.
So, and the healer isn't going to be putting out a lot of damage usually. Jade, I've found, like as you were just talking with Tyshin, she's very combo happy with a lot of damage dealers. As you said with the Minotaur, because he has the ability to uh, he'll be able to do the reckless blow ability. So if he misses, or no, he take on a critical
Yeah,
hit.
he'll do additional damage on his critical hits. So,
Right, right. So she'll give
yeah.
that 17, 18, 19, 20 crit with her, I believe, or 17 and
Yeah.
higher. So I found that you want to be able to put in as much damage as you can because you're on a time limit.
Yeah.
And at the end of the game, even if you're down to 2 characters each, the more HP you can push in or regain, in this case as well, is really critical in this type of battle.
Yeah. So, so there's definitely real good points there. I definitely agree with about Ustar. The biggest downside of him is because a lot of his abilities do require his allies to be dead, even in a 4v4. You get two of them down at least. You get some ability, to use with his specials, but it's by that point you're already getting under pressure from the enemy, right? Ustar is still a ranged character, and if he's getting somebody on top of him, then it's going to make it a little more difficult to use, some of these abilities that he may like to use, but he can't because he's got, somebody right on him. So yeah, I definitely agree. He's not maybe the most optimal.
I've always
Terran,
looked at Ustar as more of a like healer controller,
yeah,
Right. I
because
definitely agree with that.
he's got a lot of effects
yes,
that are negative effects, and most of your controllers have negative effects to your opponent,
yes,
and your
definitely.
healers have positive effects. And so he plays very, very different. If you're gonna pick him as your like main healing source, I think that's the wrong pick if you want to pump heals.
Mhm.
But if you want to pump more damage and you want to be able to have a little bit more control of the battlefield, he's great. And I mean, if you look at just his specials, they deal damage, both of them, and then they deal more damage and extra damage and do permanent things that give you the ability as Ustar to do more damage also. And nobody else has that. In fact, yeah, Jade is the only one that has a special that does any damage at all, and it's Inspire Greatness. Everybody else is 0 damages across the board for any of their specials.
Yeah, yeah, except for Ustar, but yeah,
I think Ustar and a good team would be like if your rest of your characters like pick like Sir Eric, who can do a little bit of additional healing.
Mm-hmm.
I think he can slide into that type of team very well because he does do a lot of damage on his specials.
yeah.
I've always thought
And
about doing like a Sir Eric, Ustar, Zafara, and
yeah,
a
It's like a mass like
Asteran.
supporting healing.
yeah, like everyone kind of heals just a teeny bit.
Yeah,
I
Yeah,
always
yeah, a
always
little bit
thought
of
about it.
heals and very tanky and very controlling.
yeah.
Um, yeah, it like I thought about that at one point, and I was like, but
So
your damage output is garbage with
Yeah,
with that team.
So you actually bring up a really good point that I wanted to talk about, and we've seen it a couple times in the tournament so far. And it is actually around healing because a lot of the teams have included usually one healer, but a couple of the teams have picked a couple of characters, and I don't know if it was always on purpose or maybe someone just selected them because they liked those characters. Is essentially the healing blocking characters. So there's certain characters that can block healing. So one of those is Zund, the illusionist, which we always joke never pick Zund because he rolls horrible.
true
um,
statement.
yeah, but one of his lesser known abilities, we often see Dangerous Choice because it is a very powerful effect. And if the enemy doesn't go, with the blocking their primary or whatever, they'll go with the damage. But anyway, going to Rainbow Ray, which we don't see as often, actually prevents somebody from getting healed and makes exposed, which are actually in combination is really, really strong. So exposed, there's a few heroes that have exposed, like Neri, Katar, Zund. Let's see who else. I think maybe
It's like
Garen. Oh wait, no, Garen doesn't have exposed.
Garen benefits from
Yeah, he
exposed.
benefits from exposed. Um, so anyway, just the fact that you can try to lock down one target,
Cedric.
with preventing healing is pretty powerful, especially with that expose. So you can set up somebody else, and it is a once per turn too, which I don't know. I feel like if we talk quite enough about once per turn versus ends if used. So real quick example: Berserker Strike. Second effect is target is exposed, ends if used versus Zund is the target can't regain HP and is exposed once per turn, which means you can get a target to be exposed 3 times versus Qatar's only 1 turn.
I think that's a great call out because Neri and Cedric both have exposed,
Yep.
and both of them are ends if used.
Yep.
And I know in my last fight that was something that came up with Toughened, where it's Toughened once per turn, and it's like that is so strong compared to just Toughened ends if used.
Yeah, for Holy Sword, is that you're referring to?
No, what did I use? Because it was on Zanuck that I used it, and I took an attack and then I took a reaction attack because he was toughened.
Mm. But
I think it was Warcry with
yeah,
with Rurik.
yeah, Rurik's really tough. Making a pun there too. So, Zund is just one of the heroes that can prevent healing. There actually is a few others. So Nacrel, who has probably one of the strongest healing blocking effects, is Evil Sword. Second effect, you negate any effects that make enemies within 2 squares of you regain hit points. So not only is it one target, but it's anybody within a range around the enemy. Let's see, that make enemies within square. Oh, so within Nacrel. So you actually kind of have an area where he goes of preventing healing, which is really strong as well. And then to top it off, another one here, we got Mir the Assassin. She's got Nightshade poisoned. So this is kind of a triple. It makes your target slowed, weakened, and they can't regain hit points. So weakened, they'll do less damage, and they'll be slowed, so they can't sidestep away. Nightshade poison is definitely another one of those ones that often doesn't get used, but effects are very powerful, and using these in combination, which I think there might have been one with U code where you probably would have. I think it might have been your first match where you would have benefited a little bit more from using Rainbow Ray instead of Dangerous Choice, because the enemy you're fighting wasn't in a position that they really needed to worry about the decision that they were making. So the preventing the healing that they were doing would have been significantly more powerful against them.
Yeah, that was my first game.
First game ever. JK.
Okay, JK, I was half asleep, I swear.
Let's see. Then Count Blake is also another hero that has the ability to block healing with Life Drain. And he gains a little bit of healing himself. And he also gets to ignore effects that are applied on the enemy.
I've noticed a lot of Count Blake in this tournament.
Yeah, there actually has been quite a few Count Blakes, but
Surprising.
I think that might be it. I think there's only 4. Somebody maybe will correct me later if I'm wrong, but I'm actually kind of curious to see if somebody, let's say that team you guys were talking about, someone essentially try to counterpick and do like Count Blake, Mir, Zund, and Nacrel.
That'd be gross.
I know, right?
That'd be a very gross game if those were the two teams going against each other.
I mean, it just gives you an idea of the craziness of, the kinds of counterpicking and stuff that you can do in this game.
One of the strategies that I've used that instead of counterpicking my opponent, I pick someone with 1 or 2 interrupts. Because most of the time, if I'm counterpicking, it's because like I'm looking at Count Blake and I see Call of the Master, and I'm like, they're
not
gonna
letting
try
that one go off.
Yeah, I will never let Call of the Master happen to me if I can help it. So counterpicking somebody where it's like, okay, well, Avalon fits in my team composition and kind of what I want to do with this, and he has counterspell, and so I am going to pick him so that I can counter that special. but also still get the benefits for how he's going to play into my strategy of maneuvering people around the battlefield and multiple target damage and things like that. So that's something I've also done instead of directly counterpicking somebody to counteract
Yeah.
an exact hero.
And we've actually seen quite a few interrupts. In fact, I've seen a lot of people focusing teams that had like you were saying, picking heroes that had interrupts and basically planning their strategies around those as well, because there's been a lot of interrupts. It's kind of almost surprised me how many interrupts we've seen.
But
NR is very good.
there are abilities that are just as strong as interrupts, like Dark Light, where you can't make a special attack.
Yep.
So if you don't want that Call of the Master to go off, you can use Dark Light with
Yep.
Zafara and hit him with that, and he can't use the specials. End of story.
Exactly.
And so there's also ways around, like if you're not picking a team that has interrupts, that you can stop specials from really like ruining your life.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's always other ways you can kind of play around, or there's things that maybe you don't even worry about it at all, like let's say with Path of Purification from Horus, which not many people actually ever use or consider to think about. But let's say you are going up against a team that has Jade, Count Blake, maybe Jorana, because she's got lightning reflexes. And I don't know who else. Oh, Celestial Armor from Askren.
That's so
Um,
good.
so Celestial Armor, definitely one of the top, in my opinion, one of the top tier permanent effects there. And then combination lightning reflexes, Call of the Master, Inspire Greatness. All those are really good abilities. And you have Path of Purification, which removes up to 3 permanent effects from combatants. Basically, you can sort of, counter pick, or even, it's almost like an interrupt without actually even needing to interrupt, and remove those effects and not even really have to worry about it at all. I haven't personally seen it yet, but I'm sure there is a situation that it could come up and be useful for that kind of thing.
It's just so scary saying like, well, I'm going to let all 4 of those things happen,
Oh,
and
I
then
know,
I'll
right?
remove 3 of them.
Yeah. Well, and even still, that's always assuming that all that's even going to happen to begin with, right? It's all
True.
about timing. A lot of this game is about timing, when to know, the best time to do this. So maybe, even if you ran into that team, maybe you're not like, oh, well, I'm going to only save this until all 3 of those abilities are going to be used. Well, maybe you wait, for one of those devastating ones to be put on, and then you're like, okay, well, I'm just going to, use this now rather than, wait later for it.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
you don't want Call of the Master for 3 rounds because you're waiting for the optimal moment to try and negate it.
yeah. And Call of the Master can be pretty deadly. I think so far in the matches that we've seen, it's only been used once effectively and actually got placed. But the
Mm-hmm.
person, I think, used it maybe once or twice, and then they forgot a couple turns of using the basic attack. But it can be strong. You just need to know who to put it on. I think in their example, they put it on. It might have been like a tank character or
Mm-hmm.
a healer or something like that.
It
Where
was a brute. I mean,
was it?
they put it on the Minotaur,
Oh, okay. All right. So yeah, that is a
which
good
is
example. You want to make sure to put that on, high basic attack damage characters.
my favorite one to put it on is a shooter, so that you have the range of a shooter.
Yep.
You have 8 basic attack, but then you also have this 2 movement. And if you're playing, like if you're going to be Call of the Master, that means that you probably have a brute back there with a shooter, so you can usually move that shooter into lava and have your brute stand next to it, as part of the 2 movement. And so you can really punish somebody with that 2 move if you put them into a position where you can really take advantage of it.
Yeah, that's a great combination there actually. Yeah, making sure to put it on a shooter so you can maximize that basic attack damage and still be able to hit just about anything that you see on the field. So kind of from a different perspective in terms of PvP, so obviously learning these different abilities is it takes time and experience to play the game, play these different characters to kind of get used to them, reading through all the different abilities. But I kind of wanted to talk about some of the heroes that are generally kind of better standalone heroes. Like you could pick one and they're going to do relatively decent. I'm already seeing some action there from Code. Yeah,
I
that
mean, it's
even
true.
even if you don't build a full team or a specific combination, they're good. Go ahead, Code.
Just pick this character as the start, and you're good.
I mean, you cannot go wrong with Yorana.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot build a bad team composition around her.
I,
Yeah,
I
Ella Rain.
I don't know. I feel like okay, she's pretty good with her specials. Some of her primaries maybe require a little bit more of figuring out who you're going to use things on, but you know, she probably still is pretty all around good, but
She's super strong even if you use her abilities on the wrong people.
yeah,
And I think that's like, I definitely think that she's one that her skill floor is pretty low. Like, you can get in and play her effectively pretty well, but her skill cap is super high.
yeah.
And being able to utilize her correctly is something that, like, I don't know if anybody actually can maximize her potential.
Yeah.
Cedric is one for me that it's like, if I have a new player and you just want, like, there's no way to mess up Cedric. I tell them to pick Cedric because he's just super fun, and you can pretty much do anything around him.
I usually tell people Qatar because he's even a step easier, in my opinion, than Cedric because, at least the one thing with Cedric is you have to remember, oh, okay, well, I'm at 35 or I'm at below 35, right? And for a new player that's trying to remember all the things going on, they might forget that.
Yeah, but that's like, when you pick him because of the 35, you're excited to get to that
Oh, yeah,
35.
of course.
And so, like, anytime I've been like, hey, you're a new player, like, if you just want to do raw damage and, like, just murder people, like, pick Cedric. And then they just have a ton of fun with it because they are definitely the highest damage person on the board and really making an impact once they hit that 35 mark.
Yeah. Well, and Cedric is kind of interesting because we've seen a couple different strategies, I think even in this tournament, of where, some people are attacking him and he's getting in the 35 range and then he dies and then he gets resurrected and he's back in the 35 range and he's just laying waste to the battlefield. But I think I have seen, and it may not have been the tournament, it could have been one of our other games, is essentially the idea of you just leave Cedric alone. You just don't touch him until he is the last enemy on the field. And the reason that is because if you look, all of his abilities are based off of that 35 hit point, trigger basically.
Mm-hmm.
And his damage isn't actually even as strong as some of the other brutes, or even the effects are quite as strong if you don't count the 35, right? Exposed of course is pretty good, but like Death Claws, he's just gonna do 12 damage at range 2. I mean brutes just in general always, relatively pretty high damage when you compare, but if you don't touch him at all, you actually kind of cripple him in some ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the whole strategy, if your opponent picks Cedric, is you either have to focus him or forget him, and
Yeah.
that's it. There's no in between. There's no just like, I'll deal him a little bit of damage here, because eventually he'll get down to 35 and then just lay waste to you.
Yep.
The problem with the forget Cedric is that Arena is a great game that rebalances itself. because of the way that turns work. So if you focus down all of Cedric's teammates and he's the last person left, he gets to go every single turn. And
Yeah.
if you have like a tank and a healer left, I mean, you're in some real trouble
Yeah.
because he's going to get a go super often. And if he's below that 35 threshold, he's going to just rip you guys apart.
Yeah.
So it's definitely like a high risk, high reward type situation to forget about him. So most of the time I see people focus Cedric down to just try and delete him.
Yeah. Which can be pretty tough because, people pick like a character that has a resurrection, or then they'll pick
Mm-hmm.
heroic revival or
Revival.
something, and it'll just keep coming back and keep being in that zone. So another hero that, of course, probably heard too many times, personal favorite, Renkyr the Dragon Avenger. So, I've talked many times before, easily one of the most versatile characters in the entire game. He just does so much. He's got ranged attacks, he's got blessed attacks, can do cursing to enemy, he can res somebody. On his misses, he's doing more damage. Like you just can't stop with this guy. It's ridiculous. So one strategy that I've been thinking about is sometimes people are trying to think, well, who do I focus, or who do I put certain effects on, or um, so one thing that I was thinking about with him is especially the Searing Vengeance, right? So, Renkyr is not necessarily always the highest damage dealing type character, but because, he has that versatility, that's why he's kind of like that. But the amazing thing is, because he has that ability to just put out a decent amount of damage almost no matter what he's doing. Um, so if you miss your Searing Vengeance, it's 10 residual damage instead of the 5, which is almost as good as hitting your ability. But if you do hit it, you make that target cursed, and if you put Mark of the Dragon on, or Mark of Death on that enemy, then you'll gain even more damage if you make that hit. So something I was thinking is, I've seen a lot of people really focus tanks in this tournament, and Searing Vengeance actually, in my opinion, seems almost like a tank killer, if you think about it,
Yeah, Tank
because
Buster.
yeah, exactly. Because tanks are going to have higher defense, right, than all the other classes in the game. So if you use Searing Vengeance, and obviously, you're going to want to set this up. So get Mark of Death on the tank, and if you don't, you're still going to get that 15 residual, and you get to use Mark of Death again in the future. But if you get it on him, then basically you get Renkyr in there and you just start plowing away on him with Searing Vengeance. If you miss your attack, you're still doing almost as much damage as if you made your attack. So, basically there's no downside for him to go after that tank. And then if he is hitting, he's hitting that tank for 16 damage, and he's making that person cursed, which of course then makes their job even harder of maybe trying to put out some healing, or move people around, or apply additional effects, or whatever other things that the tank may be trying to do. But anyway, he's one of the ones that I've been thinking is definitely a good solo character, but specifically this idea of like a tank busting type of character. uh, anyway, any other certain characters that have interests you guys, that make you go like, oh, there's some crazy ideas I've had with this one, or I played?
Uh,
Talassa.
if you can keep her alive.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
everyone just goes, let's kill her first.
Oh, I know,
She's new.
right?
She's scary. She's scary.
She
She is
she is
deserving scary.
scary. She scares everybody basically.
You
Having
know,
auras is nuts.
that was something I like because I had never played Talessa before until I grabbed her, and I built a team around Garen and his exposed feet because
Oh, it
like
was
the last
beautiful. That was
the
beautiful.
the last fight that I did, I like rolled so many misses. I was trying to just like negate the whole dice rolling thing, and so I wanted to make as many people exposed, and so I picked her. And I gotta say, it was super fun playing her. She's very hard to keep alive just because she does get focused really fast. Um,
Yeah. So
but
everyone
her
realizes how strong she is.
Yeah, her aura and being able to switch it every turn to like something that benefits that moment is also really cool. That
Yeah.
would be like if you could change any passive ability down here to whatever you wanted every turn, like the Faceless Emperor.
Yeah.
Um, it's really fun, and it's cool. Um,
Yeah. I mean, she's so good, and obviously her being the newest hero, there's so many more possibilities that can be combined with Talessa. Obviously, Jade, we've talked about her, how strong she is. If Jade were to put like hasten or something on Talessa, she'd be able
mhm.
to move around the field, putting that aura down basically wherever she wants, and that could really throw off the enemy team.
Yep. One thing I did want to talk about was timing of picks with PvP.
Hmm.
Um, I talked about like I had a whole strategy built around this character right here.
Garen.
Um, so if I was gonna play against Code and he was picking first, and his first pick is Rikaru, his typical first pick, I would pick I would pick Garen. Well, it's either Rikaru or
Oh, we
Jirana.
know
So,
it's Jirana. Jirana is definitely his
Piranha's
first
pick
pick.
one. Always pick
but
the safe character.
I would pick Garen last if he picked Rikaru first because he can't pick another tactician. And so I know Garen's safe. What I don't know is safe is the rest of my team that I want to build around Garen.
Yep.
So like if I wanted to grab Qatar so that I can make people exposed, or if I wanted to grab Neri so I could make people exposed, I would want to pick those two, prioritizing them over Garen, just because I know that he can't pick another tactician.
Yeah.
So also timing is really important when you're going through and you're making your picks. So if you're like, oh man, I really need a healer for my team, and the first pick they pick, Jade, don't make your first pick Thalia because you don't need her right away. You could pick her last
Yeah.
because she's safe.
Yeah, I mean that's a really good point to say there, especially for new people that are learning how to PvP. So, um, yeah, I mean you're basically it's almost way of counter picking in a way without actually knowing what the enemy is going to pick, right? But you can kind of deny a certain hero by trying to pick out into a different class that is not the same class they've already picked. Because, like you're saying, yeah, there's no need to rush a Garen pick if Rukaru's already been picked.
I also think that's something that's going to become much more thought about when we get more heroes, because dual class you can only pick.
Yes, that's a good point.
So
I'm
that
so excited for dual class.
so one thing to note down the road, because you're going to have a lot more heroes to pick from come Daenerys Adventures and RPG. Um, Dual class characters, you can't pick either of those classes of that dual class character. So
Hmm.
in that sense, if you're playing PvP and they pick someone that, let's say, healer controller, I don't know if there is one off the top of my head, but you then know that those two characters in those rows are safe.
Yeah,
So, but that's down the road. That's not right now, but that's a food for thought because that's an excellent strategy when picking characters. Is if someone picks someone from that class, you don't have to immediately pick another character from that class till the last character even.
yeah,
Because I know in my PvPs, I like went through and I picked like Xanac, and the next pick that my opponent took was Juliet, and it's like you don't need to pick Juliet right then. You can pick somebody else in that's going to help your team comp because she's safe. You'll definitely get her as your fourth pick.
Yeah.
Or you could end up picking someone that you might have wanted that you were looking at next.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
and in some ways it opens up your possibilities anymore to counterpick even more because, let's say Juliet was like part of your team or whatever, and you decide to go with like a different class out there to try to, throw off the opponent, and then they, pick something else. You can try, maybe counterpicking instead of, going with that Juliet pick that maybe you're already thinking you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
But if you pick Juliet, you've already denied yourself the ability to counterpick.
Absolutely.
I also would suggest overall when you're picking characters to be pretty flexible because I don't know if a lot of the beginner players, if they go in with a team set in mind and then they go, oh man, I need that guy for my team. If you don't have another viable option, your team might go completely out of funk and not do what you want it to do.
Yeah.
So
If they're
sometimes
too reliant on one character, is that what you're saying?
part of it too reliant as well as, don't stick to like these are the 4 characters I have to have for my team.
Yeah.
You
Mm-hmm.
also want to have a team that you can kind of say, all right, well, these are the 4 people I want, but I can piece this guy out and put this one in its place instead, maybe. And it would still at least run well enough to win the game or be, um, you'd still get your synergy going. You don't want to be able to be set on 4 characters because if you don't get those 4 characters,
Yeah.
you're going to be off a little bit.
Yep.
Especially if you're like, oh, I'm gonna pick the 4 best PvP characters. So you're like,
Right.
I'm gonna pick Garen, I'm gonna pick Jorana, Ellaraine, and Renkyr. And if I like, that's gonna be the order I pick them in, and that's what I'm gonna do. And it's like, man, if you're going in with that mindset, like Renkyr's probably gonna get picked, Ellaraine might get picked, Jorana is probably gonna get picked also. Like you're gonna set yourself up for disappointment because you can't just go in saying these are my 4. You got to have
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna pick this as my first pick, but also I might pick this one as my first pick depending on what they pick.
Correct. So you
Yep.
always have to have plan B or C.
Yeah, and there's a lot of good characters out there, and good in a lot of different ways too. It's funny you brought up rank here. I feel like Venaris is more likely the number one pick for the Bruisers, or at least seems like he gets picked more often than some of the other guys.
Depends. I think people like the damage he deals out, but I feel like Renkyr is a lot more versatile in a lot of weird situations.
Oh yeah, I
So,
definitely completely agree with you, but a lot of newer players may not fully understand that or understand the
right.
utilities of different characters, and then they go like, death sentence, oh my god, I just kill a character and I do 20 damage to somebody else, which of course is, still
So
freaking
strong.
amazing.
Especially if you hit 2 people, kill 2 characters with it.
Yeah, exactly. Is
Huh.
Who
still,
else does 40 damage in one turn? Like
yeah, right.
it's massive damage output.
There's only a few that can do that kind of much damage. The Minotaur can do that much damage. Um,
Because of
Cedric,
trample.
yeah, Trample, you can do that much damage with if you line it up, hit enough people. Cedric, you can do, I think, that much damage too, but you have to get critical strikes as well, I believe. Um,
No,
or
30 34
whoa,
with Cedric. It's 34 is his maximum if you crit.
was 34. Let's see. While you're doing your critics on 17 or more. Well, I
Oh
meant
no, you're right. You're right. Because you do. You strike a target twice.
Yeah, I didn't actually mean with like
36.
bloodthirst. I meant in combination with some of his abilities. He can get, in combination with his abilities, he can get up into those higher numbers.
Yeah.
Rokaru can do a pretty decent amount of damage. I don't think he can get quite that high. Usually you have to stick to the shooters or brutes to kind of get up to those areas. But
I think the only shooter that can do that much damage is Neri if you line up everybody in a straight line, and Zanuck if you can catch everybody with a fireball.
yeah, fireball definitely will probably get you there. I think Avila might be possible, but you have
But
to be in the right spot for it.
so, like, thinking about this, Cedric, you have to use Bestial Fury, and you have to crit
Yeah.
in order to get up in the 40s. Neri, extremely unlikely that all four characters are going to be lined up. Fireball, same thing. Well, you have to catch 3 with Fireball. You have to catch 3 with Neri. You have to catch
Oh man, you
3
don't
with
even get me
Trample.
started on. I think it was Priest game, the one where his opponent, I think it was Priest, was lined up all 4 of their heroes right at
Yes.
the beginning
Yeah.
of the game, and I was like, oh please, for the love of God, just hit perfect hunt. This is beautiful. Like I'll see something so amazing that I'll probably never see in my life again.
I
And
was
it didn't
watching that fight,
happen.
and I was like getting ready to shed a tear,
Yeah.
and then he never moved over.
He
I
didn't
was
do it.
like,
I was like, oh my god, this is like the most beautiful placement for this ability ever.
although in his defense, he did not have enough movement to get into position with just one move. But take that opportunity to step 1 or 2 that direction,
I think he
line it
did
up for
though,
the
because
next.
he
No,
had
he
the
didn't.
5 movement and he gets the benefit 4.
Oh yeah, with the
So he
benefit.
he did have the move to get there. I think one thing was Neri's turn was position. She was like position 3.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the time it got to her turn, basically there was only like 3 heroes lined up. But even 3 heroes, I mean, if you can get any time in this game, if you get 3 heroes lined up for an AoE type of attack, you are
Yeah.
doing extremely well.
Yeah, I was gonna say most of the time, if you have like an area effect or a line, you're talking like two. 2 is great, 3 is amazing, and 4 is unheard of.
Yeah, definitely. But anyway, well, any other last thoughts we have here? I think we're getting pretty close to the end of our time.
Mm.
Um,
How about bad decisions?
Bad choices.
Yes, like what you should not do.
Oh, it's really hard to do bad decisions in my opinion because there's just so many team compositions, you know.
I agree with that. I think that there's like
I think there's less optimal.
questionable. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, like because there's like if you're picking your classic like 2 melee, 2 ranged, and you pick a brute and a tank,
Uh-huh.
they have count like opposite effects.
Mm-hmm.
Where like tank wants to be surrounded by people, brutes want to be on their own, and if you you can pick those 2
Well, I
and
think
they'll
you're thinking
work
more
independently.
like tactician and
No,
brute.
well, I mean that too.
Because those,
Um,
for sure, in combination, like, Tactician has to have somebody else, and Brute doesn't want anybody else. So if you pair them up, they'll never get, their passives off.
yeah, that's a better example.
I mean, Tank, that's not necessarily horrible, but yeah, I mean, Brute isn't really the best,
My
he's best not to be with
example.
everyone.
My example was more of like it's a strategy that could work. Like if you want, because the tank wants to touch everybody and the brute only wants to touch one. And so you could pick a brute and a tank, and it work effectively as long as you keep them separated.
Yeah.
But if you pair them together, they're less effective like that. If you pick a brute and a tactician as your two melee characters, it's going to be your brute's either going to succeed or they're both going to fail.
Yeah,
Um,
and if you do bring both of these ones, then you need to bring a tank or a bruiser as
mm-hmm.
well, basically, because if you just have these two melee characters, then like I'm saying, is you're basically only ever going to get one of those benefits or maybe none.
Yeah. The I mean, and there's pairings that are better. Like I love putting a brute, or I'm sorry, a tank with a bruiser.
Uh-huh.
And just like really, you're gonna punish them if they decide that they want to attack your bruiser. And so there's definitely optimal and less optimal, is what I was going for.
Yeah. Kind of interesting from the Faceless Emperor. So, real quick, from the last match that we did, I did go back to the video, added the in the description the dialogue I had with Alex on it. In short, we basically played everything correctly, so nothing should be wrong from the outcome of that game. But I will say that something I thought that was really interesting in the playthrough that happened, but didn't quite see as much as I was really getting excited to was so the Faceless Emperor, his absorption passive allows him to pick an enemy within 4 squares, and he gets to copy that passive power. Um, oh God, the double tank passive
It's
was
huge.
so nasty, and I feel like that was not utilized to the most effective potential in that match. Because basically what you can do in a combination with the tank and the Faceless Emperor, you could be making it so that way the enemy has to attack either the Emperor or the tank, and in that case, he's going to take the hit to his roll from circle protection, and he's going to take 4 damage, like basically no matter what.
One, how punishing is it if he's like, you know what, I need to disengage and go after this like shooter that's cranking down on me, and it's like, well, take 8 damage and a -4 to your roll
Yeah,
because you were touching both my tank and my Faceless Emperor.
yeah, yeah. It's pretty nasty there. So there's definitely some interesting plays. Any other bad things? I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I don't feel like there really is bad combinations. I personally tend more towards damage heavier builds just because I feel like you gotta wipe out the enemy quick before they have an opportunity to really deal, get out their opportunities to do, special effects to your characters. But that's just me. So I think we have seen like some healer, tank, what else? Maybe tactician and like controller, which definitely is not bad in any way. But that type of team doesn't necessarily have a ton of damage. Uh, obviously it depends on who you're picking, but it's possible you can have a very low damage team,
Mm-hmm.
which will kind of make it a little bit more of an uphill battle for you.
Yeah, it would. I mean, if you pick something that's like, for instance, we were talking about going almost strictly defensive, like a Sir Eric, and then going like Thalia, Azkaran, and then like a low damage dealing like Zafara. And it's like they all have these little minor heals that they can do, except Thalia is like a major heal. But the damage output on something like that is pretty low compared to other team compositions, and
Yep.
I think that you would struggle because there are ways around the amazing defense, right? Like if somebody is protected as a tank, that's 11 defense. That's incredible. But all of a sudden, if they get exposed, you have bless. You might as well just have a 1 defense.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's a lot more ways to negate a super defensive team than there is to like try and stop a high damage output. But
Yeah.
you also don't want to go just like straight damage and have no defense because it, there's also ways to counter that too.
Yeah. You know, there was
I,
actually one other little minor thing I thought about that you made a really good point about, Tyshin, which was around basic attacks and getting to the end of the match. And you're trying to decide what abilities should you try to use. Say someone is within, with the lowest damage is 6. Somebody's at 6 health or less, choosing to use a basic attack over your primary can be the better option in some cases.
yeah, absolutely, especially shooters, for instance, where most of the time, like I had Zanuck in my last fight, and there was only one other person, and I could use Inferno Shield, but I should have used my basic attack. So with my passive, the basic attack does 12 damage, which is still pretty punishing. But you get that +1 to your attack roll, and they can't. For instance,
He,
the person I was
yeah,
fighting was Nacrel. Um, he can't use Creeping Darkness because it has to be a primary attack, and so
yep,
what's funny is I had told you about the basic attack and like trying to think like that the match before that one, and I didn't even remember myself. So it's definitely something that like with mobbing, focus, and I could have focused on that attack too, made Nacrel exposed. Like if you're able to focus and use a basic attack, you basically gain a +4 to your attack roll.
yeah,
Which is so strong in most situations. So yeah, if they're down in the like below 12 hit points, looking at a basic attack could be make or break for a lot of situations.
yeah. With that 4 too is what, 20% increased chance to hit?
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty massive. All right. Well, anyway, guys, I think that is it in terms of this discussion for now. So hopefully this was helpful for some newer players and kind of looking at the different heroes and the different combinations and options that are available, and then kind of team picking as well. Um, maybe if you join us in some competitive tournament in the future, or you're just playing competitively, in your own homes and you get the game, some ideas for you when you guys play. So, thanks guys for coming and talking some more arena with us and giving us your insights.
For having
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no problem. All right, we'll see you guys at the next one. All right.
See ya.